We have been told for some time now, millennials are the future of America. Millennials are the next wave of leadership. And many will then add millennials are also not very bright. They are needy to the point of being whiny, and they will certainly destroy modern civilization as we know it. They can only get their heads out of their cell phones long enough to understand reality. All right, we've heard all this before. Welcome to MidPoint, the Chief Technology Officer for Ultimate Software, the folks who recently knocked out an interesting survey on this generation. Adam Rogers joins us today. Adam, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
All right, Adam, what did the survey then tell us about millennials perhaps that we didn't know? Because you just heard the positive and the negative side, and I got to tell you, there are some people even here at the shop who say, don't call me a millennial. I don't want to be known as that.
Yeah, interesting enough, we are starting to see people who are millennials that want to separate themselves from some of the stereotypical things you hear that you mentioned. And yeah, so the survey was really interesting, actually. There definitely was those shocking things that we found, like about a third of millennials said that if their employer asked them to delete their Facebook page, they would actually quit their job on the spot. That's very shocking. But if you kind of set aside some of that stuff and you think about, there were some really interesting findings as well. Things like over 40% of the millennials said that they want to have feedback every single week. So when you kind of blend that in and start thinking about what that means to the workplace, there was some really interesting findings that have big implications for employers.
Well, if you think about it, because what you just said, the fact that they wouldn't take down their Facebook, depending on if they got a decent job, that strikes of narcissism at such an incredible level. And also, if you think about it, they want to hear something every week. That's pretty needy. I mean, everything we're talking about here does not basically bode well for people that we're told are supposed to be the next generation of leaders.
Right. Well, so here's the take I would say. What I think is really interesting is, so let's take what you said. That I don't know. Narcissism is quite a label. But I would submit that really what we're talking about is, for millennials, what they really value more than anything else is transparency and speed. So the Facebook thing is all about transparency. Interestingly, if you look at some of the survey data, we found in one point we found that almost 75% of everybody surveyed, so this is covering more than millennials, said, hey, you know what? I want to know why I was hired over other candidates. And if you think about that, that's about transparency. So I think you are, in a way, starting to see some of the generations actually behave more like the millennials.
It would also seem, too, that there's a lot of people, and we're coming across them, I just mentioned it a couple of moments ago, who don't want to be called millennials. It seems like almost there's becoming some sort of a negative stigma attached to that when you look at a recent study that said that 30% of the millennials that they found still live at home.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Millennials, they definitely had a delay in starting life. They grew up in economic times. They took on the most debt of anyone when it comes to schooling. So they're everything 3, 4, 5 years behind most of the other generations. What we really wanted to focus on, though, is what does it mean for employers? Because here's the thing. There's 80 million of them. So at some point, the people you need to do the jobs in today's workforce and tomorrow's workforce are going to be those millennials. What we're seeing, though, very clearly is the things that I would call out that are a little bit more positive about the millennials are really good for everybody. And 80%, by the way, 80% of the respondents said that they believe employees should be able to give their bosses performance reviews. I don't know that you would have seen that 10, 15 years ago, so they're certainly influencing the previous generations as well.
It almost seems as if there's a boldness in the millennials that many people want to be proud of.
Yeah, I think there's a boldness. I think, like I said, I think I could almost everything that we talk about with millennials, I feel like I could go back and align it with either they want transparency, so they want you to be upfront and honest with them, and very quickly, and they want speed. We saw a third of job applicants said that if they had to fill out the same piece of information more than once, they would just quit the job application. So again, it's about speed, and at the end of the day, I'm sure you talk to a lot of businesses. If you're an employer and you need to figure out how to attract very quickly and engage very quickly and retain very quickly the next generation of the workforce, the enterprises are going to have to start looking at this information and changing how they do recruiting and onboarding for employees.
I only got a few seconds left. Are you a millennial?
I am not. I missed the mark by a couple of years, but that's very nice of you to ask.
Well, that's quite, hey, you never know anymore. We got to check. I just want to make sure here, full disclosure, if you will. Adam Rogers, fascinating study. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. What about millennials and others? You want to go to Outland next.